the record. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I hope that you're well. It's Rabbi Akiva Males, and today is Wednesday. It is the 13th of April, and we're getting ready for Pesach. So I thought that today, instead of focusing on Parsha Shavua, because we're taking a break from our Parsha Shavua, we're not going to be reading Achrei Mos this Shabbos. It's going to be this Shabbos and the next Shabbos are going to be Pesach. I thought we would take a look at some Pesach-themed Divrei Torah. Some of these may be new to you. Some of them may be ideas that you've seen before, but I hope you'll enjoy them and I hope they'll enhance your Pesach. Let's start with page 1. Page 1, I've got a couple sources that start on page 1. It'll go through to page 2 as well. And I'm calling these the miracle of Jewish survival. And you'll see what I mean by that. The first source I want to share with you is a source that's really not too commonly known, and that's because it's in an introduction. Most of us don't read introductions to Sfarim or to books. We just jump right into the content of the book rather than the actual sefer, the actual book itself. But I want to share with you a very, very fascinating introduction. This was written by Rav Yaakov Emden. Rav Yaakov Emden was one of our great sages living in the 18th century, and that really was a generation of titans. There were some incredibly great Talmidei Chachamim living in the 18th century, and to be famous in the 18th century in an era of titans tells you something about the people themselves. So Rav Yaakov Emden was one of the people who was head and shoulders really above many of his contemporaries and made a real name for himself in so many ways. I'm not able to give him a full introduction in this brief amount of time. He died in 1776. And this is incredible to see one passage from the introduction to his siddur. Let's read this together. This is in his siddur, he wrote a siddur, meaning again, write a siddur, so to say. He wrote a commentary to the siddur where he wanted to include a lot of his notes about what was proper minhagim and dinim and how to conduct ourselves throughout the Jewish calendar at different Yom Tovim, different time periods. And here's in his introduction something that's fascinating. He writes, he's talking about the idea of God's involvement, ongoing involvement in our world. So he says, how could someone who denies this concept, if someone were to deny God's ongoing involvement in our world, how could they not be just frozen in embarrassment? What a ridiculous intellectual claim to make that God is not still involved in our world. Anyone who takes a pause, who pauses and stops to take stock of the standing of the Jewish people in this world. Look at us. We are one nation that has been exiled. We are like a stranded sheep. He gets very poetic. Take into account all that has occurred to us. Look at all the struggles and all the pains and all the terrible persecutions we faced for the last 2,000 years since the second Beis HaMikdash was destroyed. There is no nation in the world that is as chaste and is as beaten, as pursued as in the way that we are. We've had so many tsaros. And from the days of our youth, from our earliest time, we've had so many who have ganged up on us. To obliterate us, to uproot us, and to just cut us off from life. And it's all due to hatred. We call that anti-Semitism. The term didn't necessarily exist back then. He's saying this is all due to incredible hatred. What is at the root of this hatred? Kina, jealousy. This is according to Chazal, the nations of the world hate us because they're jealous of the special relationship that we have with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that we have with God. The Gemara tells us one of the reasons why it was called Har Sinai is because as a result of Sinai, as a result of God sharing his Torah with Am Yisrael, Sina Yardal Olam. Hatred came down to this world, and there was a sense of hatred that the Umos Olam, the nations of this world, felt towards Klal Yisrael, but that was based on jealousy. That's what he says here. Rabos Tzarenu Gam Lo Yuchlu Lanu. Despite the fact so many nations tried to oppress us, none of them were absolutely able to complete their task. La'avdenu l'chalosenu, to wipe us out and to obliterate us. Next paragraph. Kol umos hakadomos. All of the early nations of this world, Atzumos, were so mighty. Avad zichram. Their memory is gone. Batel savram sartzilam. There's nothing left of them. Their shadows are vanished. There's nothing left. The great Byzantine Empire. Who's heard of it? The great empire of the Turks. Nothing's left. The Persian Empire. What do we have? The Babylonians. There's nothing left. These people are in the dustbins of history and museums. Vanu advekim b'Hashem. And look at us, Jews who cling to God. Kulanu chayim hayom. We're still alive. Okay, we're licking our wounds. We suffered terribly, but we're still here. Despite the fact that we've had a very long and bitter exile, we have not vanished. Not even one letter, not even one punctuation mark from our Torah. And all the words of our sages, Torah Sheba'al Peh, they're kayamim, they stand. Lo yata la'aretz min alam, and nothing has fallen to the earth. Lo shalapem yad azman v'lo kulam. And even though there's so many trends to get with the times, nonetheless, historic traditional Judaism remains. Again, there have been incredible efforts that have been made over the years to reform our sense of Judaism, break away from rabbinic tradition, break away from Torah Shebechsav. And some of those movements have been successful. Unfortunately, we see the results, how that's playing itself out. But us, he's saying, those Jews who are remaining faithful to our mission, we're still here. Mayana bezeh philosoph charif. So now he gets back to his point. Someone who wants to deny God's ongoing involvement in our world. So he says, what would that, such a philosopher, such a skeptic, what would he have to say about us? If someone wants to prove, he's basically saying, if someone wants to prove the existence of God and his ongoing involvement in our world, he's saying, look at the Jewish people, look at Klal Yisrael. There's no other way to explain, after all we've been through, all the efforts that are constantly going on to obliterate us, we're still here and we're thriving. What could the most skeptical philosopher, sharpest philosopher say about this? Is it just by chance that you can explain the ongoing existence of Bnei Yisrael? I swear by my life, when I look into these wonders of the existence of Am Yisrael, I find them to be greater. Here's a wild line. Yoser mikol nisim v'niflos, the existence of Klal Yisrael in 1776, he died in 1776, but he's writing this in the mid-1700s, the existence of Klal Yisrael in the mid-1700s is in as miserable a state as they were in, is greater, Yoser mikol nisim v'niflos, is greater than all the miracles, she'asa Hashem yisparach lavosenu b'Mitzrayim, greater than all the miracles that what Hashem did for our ancestors in Egypt. The Makos, we're about to read about them on Friday night at the Seder. We're going to read about all the Makos. We're going to read about Kriyas Yamsuf. Rabbi Yaakov Emden says, you know what's a greater miracle? That we're still here, Am Yisrael Chai. After 2,000 years of being out of Eretz Yisrael, being exiled to the four corners of the world, countless nations trying to destroy us, and we're still here. We are the greatest miracle. Yeah, we could say, wow, wouldn't it be awesome if Hashem showed me something wild? I got to see the splitting of the sea. Yeah, that would be awesome. But if we're all looking for miracles, we need to do nothing more than look in the mirror. The fact that Klal Yisrael still exists after all that we've been through, there's no way to explain it. He says, Rabbi Yaakov, and this is even a bigger miracle than Kriyas Yamsuf, the splitting of the sea and all the miracles of the Exodus and all the miracles, B'midbar of Eretz Yisrael, the fact that God sustained us for 40 years in the wilderness. That's awesome. But look how much more we've sustained now, 2,000 years without a Beis HaMikdash. All the nations of the world trying to destroy us. Everything he did for us in Eretz Yisrael, again, it's even a greater proof to God's ongoing existence and ongoing involvement, rather, in our world, the fact that Klal Yisrael is still here and that we are thriving. He's writing this in the mid-1700s. Look how much more has happened since then. Besides for all the terrible persecutions that we faced in Europe since Rabbi Yaakov Emden died, how many nations have banished us? Despite all the incredible, unparalleled suffering that we experienced in World War II and the Holocaust. But look what happened immediately after. We have a sovereign Jewish state. Who could have thunk such a thing? This is wild. And again, it might not be how we want it yet. It's not fully run according to halacha. God willing, we'll get there. But the fact that we're still around and we're experiencing a revitalization of Torah Judaism, the yeshivas that have become reborn after all the destruction, the fact that there's so much Torah study, mitzvah observance that's going on, This is an incredible miracle. And Rav Yaakov Emden saying this in mid-1700s, to him this is greater than Mitzrayim. Kol Sheken, how much more so would Rav Yaakov Emden have to say if he was alive today in 2022 going into Pesach? Unbelievable. And the longer our bitter exile continues, and it continues to deepen, we just continue to be even greater amazed that we're still here and that we still exist and we're still thriving. And none of the Torah has fallen by the wayside. None of our adherence to Torah Shabbat Peh, to the Divrei Chacham, has fallen by the wayside. Find me the skeptic who could deny all this, make a logical argument to explain this. So, it can't be done. So Rav Yaakov Emden is basically saying is that the story, the Jewish survival is the greatest miracle. We're all looking for miracles. We're all saying, wow, I wish I could see the hand of God. We want to see the hand of God. Just take a look at Jewish survival. The fact that Am Yisrael Chai, that we're still here, despite everything that we've experienced. All the nations, find me another nation that's experienced exile like we've experienced, cut off from their homeland, cut off from their native tongue, cut off from each other, and has continued to thrive and maintain a national existence. It's really unheard of. And all of those empires, those mighty, mighty empires that had ruled the world, they're gone. We can learn about them in museums and try to figure out their hieroglyphics, but they're gone. But Klal Yisrael, we're still here. Amazing, absolutely amazing. That's Rav Yaakov Emden in his introduction to his Siddur. I think about that as we go into Pesach, and we're going to recount all those incredible miracles that our ancestors experienced. Let's not forget, we're a living miracle. Klal Yisrael is a living miracle, and we're a living testament to HaKadosh Baruch Hu's existence and his ongoing involvement in our world, because there's no way to explain why we're still here and why we continue to thrive despite all that we faced. That's Rav Yaakov Emden. Let me share with you something similar along these lines from the Aruch HaShulchan. This is going to fast forward another century. So Aruch HaShulchan passes away in 1908, but he thrived in the 1800s. So he's a generation or two after Rav Yaakov Emden. And Rav Yaakov, the Aruch HaShulchan was Rav Yechiel Michal Epstein. And I didn't expect to see this because Aruch HaShulchan is really just a sefer of halacha, but you wouldn't expect that he gets into hashkafa, Jewish philosophy, but he does just that right towards the beginning of his sefer. And this is in Orach HaChaim, so that's the first section, Orach HaChaim, and it's right in the first section here. Let's look what he says here. Kasav Asmag, the Sefer Mitzvahs Gadol, one of the Rishonim writes, Mitzvahs Aseh Letzadek Esadin Al Kol Mara, that we have an obligation to do Tziduk Hadin, meaning to basically to bless God no matter what occurs in our life. Even if something happens that looks really rotten, we still say Baruch Dayan Ames. And think about this. We've all been to funerals, and as Avelim Terakriya, they make the bracha and they use God's name of Baruch Dayan Ames because they're acknowledging, even though they've just suffered an incredible blow, they still recognize we don't understand why this happens, but we're not living in a world of chaos. There is a Borei Olam, there's a creator. He continues to be involved in our world. And somehow or another, everything that's going on is part of his plan. And that plan, somehow or another, even though we can't imagine how, somehow is for the best for our world, for Klal Yisrael, and for ourselves. So he says, the Smag says we have an obligation to be matzdik esadin, shenemar, because the Torah says, yadata im lavavcha, we should know in our hearts. Kasher yaser ishes beno, the same way a parent lovingly rebukes, chastises, corrects the child, Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Elokecha mi'asrecha. That's the way Hashem corrects us. Sometimes we get a slap. Sometimes it might be more than a slap, but it's coming from a place of love. The same way that a parent would lovingly rebuke, lovingly correct the child, that's the way that God Almighty deals with us. Ad kan Lashono, that's what the Smag says. V'anachnu b'nei Yisrael, and now we are the Jewish people. Ayefe hazman, we've become so tired because of such a long galus. Below menucha, we've never had a chance to rest. Zekarov l'shnei alafim shana, close to 2,000 years since the destruction of the second Beis Hamikdash. Chayavim anu ladas, we're still obligated to recognize and to know. Shezeu hakol tovosenu, this bitter exile that we're experiencing, somehow or another, is for our good. What does that mean? L'zachech osanu. It is meant to purify us. The same way that, let's say, you have metals, and you want to purify those metals. So they go through a hot oven, a kur habarzal. They'll go through this iron furnace in order to melt out the imperfections. So there's this idea from Chazal that the bitter exile that we face is meant to do the same thing. You'll see this in many of the commentaries to the Haggadah. They say the same idea, that bitter exile in Egypt was meant to perfect us before we would go into Eretz Yisrael, was meant to put us through that cauldron, put us through that process of purification process. So Chazal have this idea about galus, this long and bitter galus, that it's meant l'zachich, it's meant to purify us, it's meant to filter out all the impurities that are there. Kmo shamar hanavi Zechariah, like what the Navi said, it's saraftim kitzaruf es. I will purify you the same way a silversmith, melts down all his metals to purify the silver. Uvechantim kivichon es hazav, and I'll put you through this cauldron the same way a gold worker will do to purify his gold. Hu yikra b'shmi v'ani aneh so amarti amihu hu yamar Hashem Elokai. So that's what the Rabbi Zechariah says, that the difficult times we're going to go through, even though they are difficult and we don't see how it's for our benefit, what keeps us sane when we suffer so much is to say somehow or another, for our national mission, this is meant to purify us. This is meant to improve us. Ubira Kasav, what does he mean? Laha'amin, what did Zechariah Navi mean? So the Aruch HaShulchan writes, La'amin b'emunah shalema. We need to believe with a complete sense of faith. Shekol tzaraseinu, all of our troubles, b'chol tiltaleinu, all of our wanderings, einu al derech hanakima chas v'shalom. It's not that God is just taking revenge on us and beating us up. Chas v'shalom. The whole purpose is really to purify us, to filter out our imperfections. If that weren't the case, there wouldn't be anyone left. If Hashem just wanted to take revenge, he would have wiped us out a long time ago. Our long and bitter exile is not about God taking revenge. We wouldn't still be here if that was the purpose. And I have this bolded. There's no greater sign than this about what? The fact that we still exist and we still thrive close to 2,000 years after the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed. The only way to explain this, how Klal Yisrael still exists and still thrives, is because God is directly involved in keeping us around. Lo sar, he has not left us. V'lo yisar afrega, and he will not leave us even for a moment. Ka'ava mashkiach al beno, the same way a parent looks over their child, yechido, their only child, umiyasro, and sometimes rebukes that child, corrects that child, letova so, for that child's own good. V'raya lazeh, and what is a proof to this? Shari b'chol zman ha'galus. What goes on in this whole galus? Like the Navi Zechariah said, Hu yikra b'shmi v'aneh aneh so. All you need to do is call out in my name and I will answer you, says God. Klomar, kishanu mispalalim alav yisparach. When we daven to God, he will answer us in our time of need. Amarti amihu, again, back to Zechariah. Zechariah says, God says, I said they are my people. Hu omer, and they say that God is my God. Klomar, what does that mean? Sharei anu roim, shebechol zman ha'aruch hazeh. During this very long and bitter exile, in Bnei Yisrael, holchem b'derech haTorah mitzvah. When Klal Yisrael dedicates itself as a nation to go along with, live lives of Torah and mitzvahs, who yisparach karei osanu ami. That's God will call us his people. V'anachnu karmoso Elokei Yisrael, and we will call God our God. So again, the Aruch HaShulchan, Yechiel Mechel Epstein is talking about the miracle of Jewish existence. If we need anything to explain and for proof that God remains involved in our world, look at the ongoing existence and the thriving of Klal Yisrael. There's no way to explain this other than to say God is involved. Two incredible sources. Let's look at a very different source. This third source was pretty much a contemporary of the Aruch HaShulchan, Samuel Langhorne Clemens, not Jewish, but he was American, better known by the pen name Mark Twain. He was an American humorist, satirist, lecturer, and writer. And Mark Twain had a very famous essay that was called Concerning the Jews. It's in Harper's Magazine. It was printed in June of 1899. So what's amazing about this is that many of the points from Rabbi Yaakov Emden and Rabbi Yechiel Mechel Epstein, you'll find Mark Twain is writing. And Mark Twain did not read, I guarantee you, he did not read the introduction to Rabbi Yaakov Emden Siddur, and I guarantee you he did not study the Aruch HaShulchan. He arrived at his conclusions based on observation and using his own chachma. Let's take a look at what he wrote. And I think this is very familiar. Many of us will recognize these three paragraphs. Now, this was part of a much larger article about Jews and anti-Semitism. And here's how he concludes. To conclude, if the statistics are right, the Jews constitute but 1% of the human race. It suggests a nebulous dim puff of stardust lost in the blaze of the Milky Way. Properly, the Jew ought hardly to be heard of, but he is heard of, has always been heard of. He is as prominent on the planet as any other people, and his commercial importance is extravagantly out of proportion to the smallness of his bulk. His contributions to the world's list of great names in literature, science, art, music, finance, medicine, abstruse learning are also a way out of proportion to the weakness of his numbers. He has made a marvelous fight in this world in all ages and has done it with his hands tied behind him. He could be vain of himself and be excused for it. The Egyptian, the Babylonian, the Persian rose, filled the planet with sound and splendor, then faded to dream stuff and passed away. The Greek and the Roman followed and made a vast noise, and they are gone. Other peoples have sprung up, held their torch high for a time, but it burnt out, and they sit in twilight now, or have vanished. The Jew saw them all, beat them all, and is now what he always was, exhibiting no decadence, no infirmities of age, no weakening of his parts, no slowing of his energies, no dulling of his alert and aggressive mind. All things are mortal, but the Jew. All other forces pass, but he remains. What is the secret of his immortality? Awesome article. I know exactly how Rav Yaakov Emden would answer. I know exactly how the Aruch HaShulchan, Rav Yechiel Michal Epstein would answer. They'd say, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You're right. Mark Twain, you're 100% right. This makes no sense. Makes absolutely no sense. The only way to explain the secret of our immortality is to say HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The fact that there's a God Almighty and there's Hashgacha, he remains involved in our world. He remains involved in his relationship with us, looking after us and keeping his promises that we will not disappear. That's the only way to explain why we're still here. And that our future is in our hands. As the Navi Zechariah said, if we call out to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, if we commit ourselves on a national basis, not on a personal one, not on just our family, but on a national basis, if we commit ourselves to a life of Torah and mitzvos, we can reclaim our proper place where HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants us to be, the relationship that he wants to have with us, and our place in the world, and our station, our relationship with God that we're intended to have. I think these are three incredible sources to think about and to have as we go into Pesach. I want to share with you another one. This is a great one. I saw this year, and it was funny. I was working with some of the students at the school. We were preparing some Divrei Torah for Pesach, and one of the students that I was working with saw this Divrei Torah, and I told him, I said, "Oh my gosh, that's incredible! I also just saw this, and I think this is beautiful." So he shared this with the class. They printed it up in the Haggadahs that they're going to use. I think it was Yehuda Khan, in fact. It was Yehuda that did this, but I want to share this with you now. So this is an article that appeared a number of years ago by Rabbi Aaron Goldscheider. And Rabbi Aaron Goldscheider lives in Yerushalayim in Israel, but he said over a beautiful thought from Rav Soloveitchik. And I want to share this with you. Let's look at this first page. This was in one of the YU Torah to Goes that came out a couple years ago. Let's just look at this first page. It's called The Giving Jew. The Rabbi Joseph B. Soloveitchik on Yachatz and Achnasas Orchem. At the Pesach Seder, we engage in the curious custom of Yachatz, breaking the middle matzah into two parts. Why is this one of the 15 steps to freedom? One well-known explanation is offered in the Talmud. Ma darko shel ani beperusa. Just as a poor person eats a broken piece of a loaf, so too matzah must be eaten as a broken piece. The poor slave would break the flat, crusty bread and hide away a piece for later, not knowing where his next meal would come from. The breaking of the matzah at the Seder symbolizes the way we first ate matzah as slaves. That's, I think, what we were all taught in school. In a second, Rav Soloveitchik, he had another idea to share, which is beautiful. Rabbi Joseph Soloveitchik Zatzal suggested an inspiring insight regarding this custom. Although when we think of the enslavement of the Jewish people in Egypt, we usually think that all the Jews must have been equally burdened by it. In truth, this was not so. There were various degrees of slavery. Some Jews lived under bitter conditions, some worse. According to our sages, one tribe, the tribe of Levi, was never enslaved. What this means is that some had access to food and some did not. Those that did, claims Rabbi Soloveitchik, broke their bread and shared it with other Jews who had less. Even the Jews who were enslaved in Egypt, but may have been better off, would split their piece of matzah and share it with those who suffered and needed it more than they did. Hence the term poor man's bread. When we break the matzah and perform yachatz, as our forefathers did, it's a symbol of the chesed, the loving kindness and solidarity of Jew towards their fellow Jew, even under the harshest conditions. Bearing in mind this unique explanation, the flow of the Seder, which transitions from the breaking of the matzah to the invitation, kol dechvin, yesei v'yechol, all who are in need are invited to join in the Pesach meal, is poignant. Inviting those who are in need activates a key virtue that permeates the Jewish heart, namely chesed, expressed through the mitzvah of achnasas orchim, hospitality. The mitzvah of hospitality is most precious to the Jew. It's rooted in our collective souls from the beginning of our history, as early as Avram and Sarah, who distinguished themselves in opening their homes to strangers. Rav Soloveitchik highlights 5 aspects of the mitzvah, achnasas orchim, that imbue it with special significance. So he goes on to talk about some things that are unique about the mitzvah of achnasas orchim. But what a beautiful idea, and to understand the yachatz. In addition to what we all learned in school as kids, yes, yachatz relates to the fact that slaves would break their bread to save some for later. But that learning, that idea that we learned as kids, that's keeping it to themselves. Yeah, the slave would break some away. They don't know when their next meal is going to come, so they break some. Don't eat it all now, save some for later. Rav Soloveitchik was suggesting there was a different idea, is that even individual slaves, they were looking out for each other. And one would break their bread and give away to the other. How can I eat this whole piece myself? I see someone's in worse shape than I am. I've seen accounts of this from the Holocaust, where people who were so weak, they saw someone who was even weaker, and they gave up some of their rations. They couldn't give up everything, but gave up some of their rations to share with someone else. That's yachatz. He says that's the idea of how we're beginning the Seder, to say, even if I'm in a state of weakness, I recognize I have more blessing than the person next to me. So what can I share? Each one of us should look at ourselves and say, what can I share? I may need help. I may need to be on the receiving end myself, but there must be something that I could still share. Even if we're in a position of hardship, there's something we can still share. That's what he's suggesting the idea of yachatz is. And that's so beautiful, because the very next part of the Seder is when we declare in Halach Ma'anya, Kol dechvin yesei v'yechol. We say, I'm looking to share. If someone's in need, I'm inviting them to come in, and I want to help them out. What a beautiful way to symbolize that. I'm taking what I did at yachatz, and now I'm putting it into words, putting it into action. Very, very nice idea. And I think that gives a new insight into what might be the idea behind yachatz. I want to share with you on this idea of tzedakah, chesed, trying to look out for others. We're going to go to page 4. Page 4, 2 beautiful stories of our ancestors. One is from Rav Yosef Chaim Sonnenfeld. That's the one on the left. So look at this. This was in that same issue of Why You Torah to Go. So in Rabbi Goldscheider's piece, because it all had to do with hospitality and chesed. Look at this one on the left about Rabbi Sonnenfeld. So it says, Rabbi Sonnenfeld's paid Pesach guests. A few American tourists knocked on the door of Rav Yosef Chaim Sonnenfeld, a prominent rabbi in Jerusalem, asking if the rabbi would host them for the Pesach Seder. They explained they were supposed to eat in a hotel and their plans fell through, and they insisted on paying hundreds of dollars for the hospitality. Rav Sonnenfeld graciously hosted them for the Seder. On Chol HaMoed, Rav Sonnenfeld visited them and returned the money. The guests asked quizzically, why did you take the money from us knowing you would return it? It means, why'd you take it in the first place if you didn't want it? Rav Sonnenfeld explained that he would never want to take money to perform the mitzvah of inviting guests. However, he knew that if he didn't take the money, the guests would feel as if they were imposing and wouldn't be able to fully enjoy the Seder. Therefore, he accepted the money, allowed the guests to fully enjoy the Seder. Now the Seder's over, he's returning it. What a beautiful mindset. In other words, he says, I understand human psychology. Human psychology is these proud tourists who are prepared to spend hundreds of dollars to stay in a hotel, they don't want to be takers. They want to be customers. They want to be consumers. They want to pay for something. They don't want to feel like a nebuch. They don't want to feel a charity case. So if I just say to them, no, I'm not taking your money. Come be my guest. They're going to be uncomfortable. They might not ask for a second piece of chicken. They might not ask for another piece of kugel, because they'll look around and they'll say, how can I ask? Look at this family. They're impoverished. But if you're paying customers, oh, now you'll eat like a mensch. Now you'll eat, like you say, you'll ask for another piece of chicken. You'll ask for another one. So Rav Sonnenfeld wanted them to feel like guests, didn't want them to feel like tzedakah cases. What an interesting idea. And I think that's really important for us as we go into Yom Tov. Many of us are looking to help others. We just saw this idea from Rav Soloveitchik that we want to help others. Of course we want to help others. Tzedakah, chesed, achnas orchim is huge. But what can we also do to help the other maintain their dignity? If that's the best way to help others. If I can help them, but help them in a way that they don't have to feel they were on the take. Help them in a way that they can maintain their dignity. That's the ultimate tzedakah. Another idea, look at this one. So this is from Rav Soloveitchik's great-grandfather. We all know that Rav Soloveitchik was here in America. His name was Rabbi Yosef Dov, Rav Yasha Ber Soloveitchik. His grandfather, right, his father was Rav Moshe Soloveitchik. His grandfather was Rav Chaim Soloveitchik, Rav Chaim Brisker. And Rav Chaim's father was the original Rav Yosef Dov Soloveitchik, the Brisker Rav. So let's see the story about Rav Soloveitchik's great-grandfather. This is a very famous story, but it's beautiful. Using milk for the 4 cups. The Beis Halevi, Rav Joseph Ber Soloveitchik, the illustrious great-grandfather of Rav Joseph B. Soloveitchik, is the subject of this touching Pesach story. A poor man came to the home of Rav Yasha Ber. The man said that he came to ask a question regarding Pesach. He had a halachic question to ask. He told the rabbi that he could not afford to buy wine, so he wished to know if he could fulfill his obligation to drink the 4 cups of wine during the Seder by drinking 4 cups of milk. Rav Yasha Ber told him that no, one cannot fulfill this important command by drinking milk, then proceeded to give the man 25 rubles with which to buy wine. After the man had gone, Rav Yasha Ber's wife approached her husband with this question. Why, when wine cost 2 or 3 rubles, did you give him 25? We're not rich. What was that? So Rav Yasha Ber smiled and he says to his wife, if he's so poor that he cannot afford wine to the Seder, I doubt that he has the money to buy chicken and matzah for the Seder nights. And you know something? If he's asking about drinking milk, that means he has no meat or chicken because he would not be mixing it with milk. I want to give him money so that he can buy the proper food that he needs to fully enjoy the Yom Tov of Pesach. It's a beautiful story. So he's looking beyond the question. Is that okay? That's the question that came in. I could just answer it, just cold halacha. No, milk's not good for the 4 cups. You got to use wine. Goodbye. Or I could say, wow, if he's asking me about milk, he didn't mention to me he's got some kind of medical reason why he can't drink wine. He didn't say he's got some kind of health condition. It must be he's so broke. He's got his cow in the back that's giving him milk. That's what he could have. But if all he's got is he's so poor that he's only got milk, that means he doesn't have money for matzah. And you know what else? If he's asking me about milk, that means he's not having fleishiks. What's a Yom Tov? With no meat or wine, he gets 25 rubles. So again, I think these are beautiful ideas. Is that number one, we saw from Rav Soloveitchik's explanation of Yachatz, the idea that even when we're in an impoverished, broken state, we want to share with others. We want to do chesed. No one is at a point where they can't share something with others. We always want to share with others. That's chesed. Next idea is, yes, but while we're sharing with others, let's do it in a way that they can keep their dignity. That's what Rav Sonnenfeld did. And then one more piece to this, nugget to this, is Rav Soloveitchik's great-grandfather's idea, is that when we're trying, we have to put on our thinking caps and try to understand what are the real needs that are out there. Don't just look at what shows up on the surface, but try to take a look behind the scenes, peel back a layer and see what the real needs truly are. If we could put on our thinking glasses, we can discern what those true needs really are. We can do some incredible chesed in this world. I want to share one last idea with you, because we just mentioned Rav Soloveitchik's great-grandfather, the original Rav Yasha Ber Soloveitchik, the Beis Halevi. I saw something beautiful about the Beis Halevi. It pertains to the Haggadah. It's not really on the Haggadah, but you'll see how it pertains to it. And this is from Sefer Torah Ladas by Rav Blum, Rav Matis Blum Zatzal. This was, I saw it in one of his farm on Pesach. He brings down a beautiful, beautiful story. So we know in the Haggadah, one of the most moving parts in Magid is when we read about the 4 sons, the Chacham, the Rasha, the Tam, and the Eino Yodea Lishol. So we have the wise son, we've got the wicked son, we've got the son who's just simple, and then the son who doesn't even know anything to ask. So let's see what Rav Blum brings down here. Beautiful story. It says, Keneged Arba Banim Divrei Torah. Haggadah Shel Pesach Mi Beis Levi. So there was a Haggadah that came out containing all sorts of different Divrei Torah from the Beis Halevi, which is Rav Soloveitchik's great-grandfather, the original Rav Yashadov Soloveitchik. Kovetz Haaros Mesupar, this following story is brought down. The Yosef Rabba Shel Slutsk. So again, the town that he was most famous with, the Soloveitchik family, as being the Rabbanim, being the rabbis of, was the Lithuanian town of Brisk. So Brisk is the one that they're synonymous with. But there was a period of time where the great-grandfather of Yashaber was the rabbi of Slutsk also. So while he was the rabbi of Slutsk, Yashav Pam Moran Beis Halevi Basifas Hisyatsus Imrashe V'Nechbedei Akihila Ladom Mitzorcha Yair. There was one time where the Beis Halevi, Rav Yashaber Soloveitchik, met with all the prominent members, the leadership of the community, that they had to deal with important communal matters. So it must have been like, imagine this big board meeting, and the prominent Rabbanim are there, and the local lay leaders. So all the leadership of the Jewish community of Slutsk is there. Binay, and all of a sudden, Nidchak Lecheder, who shoves himself into this room, someone squeezed in somehow, Kafri Bor, some simple, like a village, simple village folk. There's some guy he was an unlearned hick. He was Jewish, but he was an unlearned hick. He says kafri, like a kfar, is a little like village, like a country bumpkin. And Bilavayas Beno, but he schlepped along, he dragged in his little son with him. So he's at this meeting, there's this important meeting going on, and who somehow or another monkeys his way into the room, like the village idiot. So it's sad to say this, but that's how he's being described, this unlearned, unlettered boar from one of the little outlying villages, and he schlepped along one of his little boys with him. Narkeven Sheish Sheva Shanim. This little boy was about 6 or 7 years old. V'hichriz, and all of a sudden, the simpleton starts screaming, Rabbi, kol banai barimim. You should know all of my sons are ignoramuses. They don't know how to read. They're unlettered. Avalas benizeh, but this boy, this 6, 7-year-old boy, zachisi lagadel Torah. I merited to get him a Torah education. Ukfar lo medu chumash, and believe it or not, he's already learning chumash. This boy, look at this. This is my little tzadiko. Yisana Rabbeinu al kankano ladas, and he begs the rabbi. He's begging the chief rabbi, that Rav Soloveitchik, please do me a favor. Can you please give him a test, a bechina? Ladasim amnam yodea hu asar chumash k'divrei melamed. His tutor's telling me that this kid really knows his stuff, knows his chumash. I can't test him because I'm unlettered, I'm unlearned, I know nothing. But I heard there's this convention, there's this going on, that the great Torah leadership is here, and this is my one chance. Can you please test my son? Make sure, is it true what the Melamed is telling me, that this kid really knows Chumash? That's what he says now. So imagine the scene, that everyone's time is precious, and this unlearned fellow comes in, and he sticks his 6-year-old kid. He says he wants to tell you about the story of Noach and the Teva. This is what he does now. So Kama Mea Mesovavim, many of the other people in the room who were there, they were shocked by this guy who busted in and did this. They were pretty furious. Alazusa, what kind of chutzpah is Shel Kafir? What kind of chutzpah is this from this country bumpkin? Some people even started yelling at him. Ezu chutzpah. What kind of chutzpah is this? You can't find someone to give your son, the big genius, the kid who's just starting to learn Chumash. You got to go to the chief rabbi of Slutsk. You got to go to the Beis Halevi. Go find the tailor to give him a bechina. Go find the butcher to give him a bechina. Why are you wasting the time of the rabbi? And they were prepared to eject him. They were going to throw him out of here, saying, there's a chutzpah, you're wasting the grand rabbi's time. Acharav, he says, but the Rav Soloveitchik, he went out and he's quieted everyone down. All you people who want to defend my honor, sha. Hu ramaz, and he hints, he motions, sheyageh shalavim beno el shulchan. Please, he welcomes this country bumpkin. Please approach, come sit down with me at the table with your son. Hakafri asa kimitzvah mitok kavod. And the kafri, this village bumpkin, this country bumpkin, he does exactly what he's told with great honor. He comes up to the chief rabbi's table. After the little boy tells Rav Soloveitchik what part of Chumash he's learning, Shalu Mispar Shelos Kalos, Rav Soloveitchik asks him a couple of very, very simple questions. Asher Hayalad Yadalanos Alayan Al Esr Lulamishal, that the kid was able to answer perfectly. So Rav Soloveitchik asks this kid, "Oh yeah, Noach, you're learning. Oh yeah, what happened? Was the world threatened with fire? No, there was going to be a flood. Excellent. And what was he going to build to escape the flood? Was he going to build a train? No, he was going to build an ark. Excellent. So he's asking him very, very simple questions that the kid should be able to answer and get an A+. So when he succeeds in acing all these questions, Rav Soloveitchik gave him a big pat on the cheek, Shalanar ba'ava, this with fatherly love. And he turns to the father, Amar, and he says to the father, Mechalkecha yehi chalki. Oy, halavai, your chelek, what you have, I should have. Halavai yomru al bani, if only they would say about my son, masheroi lomar al bincha, what people are destined to say about your son. Egle damos gil shatfu as pneav, and the father bursts into tears, just starts crying with nachas. Uvechol chanuk nena, with a choking voice, he responds, Ata yodeani kilo larik ani amel. He says, thank God, now I know it's not for naught that I've been working so hard to make money to pay that melamed to teach my kid Torah. And he immediately left the room glowing, smiling, so happy with his little son, his little tzaddik following after him. After they left the room, one of the people there says, okay, we're all bothered by what just happened. And Rav Soloveitchik, you got to explain to us, Rav Yashaber, Beis Halevi, explain to us what just happened. Why did you waste your time? And what kind of bracha was that they should say about my son, what they're going to say about yours? Hi, what on earth just happened? Mara Rabbeinu Benar Kafri said, what did you see so special about this child of the country bumpkin? Rabbeinu Nisbarach Bo, and now you want to be benched that they should say about your kid what they're going to say about him? Pashut Ma'od Nena Arav. So Rav Soloveitchik says it's very simple. Kachamarti, this is what I said. Halavai sheyomru al bani shiyafa kochem b'Torah mekoach avihem. I want them to say about my son that he knows more Torah than his father does. He goes, what a bracha. He goes, I didn't verbalize this, but that was my bracha to the kid, is that this is beautiful. This kid, he was able to answer a couple very simple questions, but he knew more than his father. So what are people going to say about that son? Look at that son. He knows more Torah than his father. So Rav Soloveitchik said, he goes, my bracha is, people should say about my son the same thing they're going to say about yours. Meaning what? Halavai, my kid knows more Torah than I do. The same way they're going to say about your kid, he knows more Torah than you do. And everyone was like so impressed. Ooh, wow, yeah, wow. Ooh, you can imagine the whole room. Ooh, yeah, well, look at that chachma. So when everyone's so impressed, then Rav Soloveitchik, then he wagged his finger at everybody in the room and he chastised them. He says to this crowd, you all blew it. You were all ready to throw that guy out, and you were all yelling at him that he was a mechutzef, and he was so arrogant. He says, "Velo sasu l'kayim mitzvahs gemilas chasadim shebaguf im Yehudi tamim." He goes, "You blew an opportunity. Oh, you had an opportunity gemilas chesed. That was chesed. Chesed isn't just with money. Chesed isn't just with buying someone food for Pesach. Chesed is with our attitude, what we can share with a person. And here you had an opportunity to make this guy feel like $1 million. This guy he's a country bumpkin. He doesn't know anything. He's slaving away to hire a malamed to teach his kid Torah. Make him feel good. We had an opportunity to do Gemilas Chesed, and you were all ready to chase him out of the room. Here, this is Chesed. This is what you need to do." And he added, Halavai, God gave me opportunities every single day to be involved in chesed like this. Im Yehudi akafri hatamim, with just a good, simple, wholesome country bumpkin Jew. I don't care that he's not the greatest scholar, but I had a chance to do chesed with someone who's so wholesome. Who could ask for anything more than that? We're here to do chesed. We're here to share with others. This is our attitude. We're looking for chesed, and chesed's not just with our wallet and our checkbook. Chesed is giving someone else a listening ear. Chesed is listening to another person when we don't think we have time. Chesed is finding time in our busy day to think, okay, can I take on something else? And that comes back to what his great-grandson, or Salvation's great-grandson, said about Yachatz. We're all in a situation of need, but there's still some way I can crack off some of my matzah and give to someone else who needs it more than I do. Our schedules are all full. I say this for myself too. I don't know how I could fit more in my day, but sometimes there are people who still need us, and we've got to try and find a way. Let's find some way. Chesed is not just with our checkbook. It's not just with our wallet. It's with our time. It's giving a listening ear, and sometimes just doing the best we can to lift another person's spirit. So I think these are some wonderful ideas to go into Pesach with. Again, the first ideas we saw had to do with the miracle of Jewish survival, and just the fact that if we were looking, as we recount all the miracles of Pesach, and we say, if only God would show us a miracle, our life would be different. We've got miracles all around us. We just have to open our eyes. Look at Am Yisrael, Klal Yisrael. The fact that we're here, we're around, we're thriving, that is a miracle. Rabbi Akiva says it's even greater than Yetzias Mitzrayim. And this is what astonished Mark Twain. And what's the answer to Mark Twain's question? What's our secret? Exactly what Rabbi Akiva said, what the Aruch HaShulchan and Rabbi Chil Michal Epstein said, is Hashem's hashkacha, God's ongoing involvement with us. That's what explains our immortality. And then we have this idea of chesed, this idea that Pesach should remind us, Yachatz should remind us that the essence of Klal Yisrael is chesed. We crack off some of our matzah, we share with others. Even if we're in need of help ourselves, there still must be something I could share with someone who's worse off. That's what we want to do. And when we're sharing chesed with others, that story from Reb Sonnenfeld, let's help make sure the other maintains their dignity. The story from the Beis Halevi, the original Rav Yashaver, is that what are we going to do? Don't just look at what's on the surface, look what's beneath the surface. If they're asking about milk, that means they don't have money for matzah. That also means they don't have money for meat and chicken. And then finally, this last story of Rav Yashaber about how he took that kid in at a very busy time and he lowered himself, so to say, to give a bechina, to give a little exam to a kid with some very simple Chumash questions. But why did he do that? It was all about chesed. Chesed isn't just with a wallet. It's not just with our checkbook. Chesed is finding time for another person again, but that gets back to Yachatz. We're busy schedules ourselves, but as busy as we are, there's other people who need us, need something, need our time, need our conversation, whatever it is. We can do incredible chesed with others, not having to do with finances. So let's keep our eyes open. Let's see those opportunities. Let's look what they are and let's share. If we could keep these two ideas front and center as we go into Pesach, the idea that we recognize that Hashem is our mashkiach, Hashem remains involved in our world, involved in our lives on the national level, on the personal level, we'll have accomplished everything we hope to accomplish out of Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim, as we spoke about on Shabbos. And if we could continue the second theme, that we're looking for ways to share with others, and it doesn't have to always be financially, plenty of other ways too, then we're also going to get that lesson out of the Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim as well, that we're a nation of sharers. That's what redeemed us from Mitzrayim, this ability to share, be engaged in Gemilas Chesed, and let's do it in the way that can help others maintain their dignity. Let's do as much as we possibly can. With that, I'm going to close.